Hey friends, Dean here. Before we get you on to your episode, I want to take a moment to invite you to our next virtual online trivia night. Wednesday, May 13th at 8 p.m. Join us either on our Facebook group or on our YouTube page for 3 rounds of fun trivia, music questions, movie questions, general knowledge questions. It'll be a fun time and a chance to win some prizes and have just a good relaxing night of some trivia at home. You don't even have to go out for it. So don't forget, Wednesday, March 13th at 8 p.m. Join us on our Facebook group or YouTube for 3 rounds of fun virtual online trivia. We'll see you there. How do you follow up the greatest selling album of all time? Well, if you're Lindsey Buckingham, you throw the rule book out the window and literally go your own way. In this episode, we're talking about Fleetwood Mac, and the album is Tusk. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff, and Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome to the 3324 podcast. If you're new and joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. We appreciate having you. If you are a returning listener, welcome as well. We appreciate all of our listeners, and we thank you for checking us out. We are on social media, Instagram and at Facebook at 3324 podcast. You can find us there. We do live shows on Facebook a couple times a month. We always value the interaction. We love it. So definitely join us there as well. So that's the part where you can kind of hang out and test our knowledge too. Right, Eric?
That's right. Absolutely right.
Put us to the test.
Indeed.
Or give us your opinion. We love it. We love the interaction.
We want the feedback. So
much fun.
Check us out, guys. Yeah.
So much fun. Absolutely. So this is one of our big ones, right?
Absolutely. This
was one of our, when we were making our list, Eric advocated heavily for this to be the first episode, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And
this was a biggie.
Much to my chagrin, Dean at the last minute changed his mind and decided, nope, we're not ready for this yet. I'm like, what do you mean?
Understudy, Phil Collins, come on in, face value.
Yeah. Well, hey,
yeah. So Tusk was one of our, when we conceived of the podcast and what were some of those core albums that we loved and wanted to talk about, Tusk was at the top of the list, along with ELO, along with the Beach Boys, which we haven't gotten to yet. So you see, we're sprinkling it out. We're not just doing everything at once.
That's right.
Right. We're savoring the flavor.
Yeah, exactly. This was I just love, the thing of it is that this album is special for the both of us. I would say that this album by far is probably the single best album that you and I connected on. Do you agree?
I don't know. Maybe I would put this and Time by Electric Light Orchestra together.
Okay.
As kind of a companions to each other. I think those two albums together kind of make up one of the reasons why we started this podcast. Yeah. Was wanting to talk about Tusk and wanting to talk about Time by ELO. Mm-hmm. And then all the other stuff that we connected with. So this was absolutely one of the first ones that we thought of like, oh my God, this would be awesome. Like we're going to, this would be awesome to talk about Tusk.
This is what it's all about, guys. This album is, by far, Dean and I, we've known each other since the 7th grade. We didn't hang out all the time. It took a while for us to kind of get together and just, whatever, but we came together bonded by music. I think, we talked about music very early on.
And Star Wars.
Both huge Fleetwood Mac fans, both huge ELO fans. I think that was the common denominator there. But this is one of those albums that I feel for me it's just one of the watershed albums. It's my childhood all the way up to now. I've never gotten tired of it. So let's get into it.
And funny story. Recently, someone was saying, "Oh, what do you have coming up? What are you doing?" Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to be doing Fleetwood Mac." And like, "Oh, what? You're going to do Rumours?" I'm like, "No, we're not doing Rumours. We're not doing Rumours."
If you had approached me and said we're doing Rumours instead of Tusk, I would have been like, No, I would get somebody else because we're not talking about Rumors. No.
Yeah, I mean, we may get to Rumors at some point. I'm sure we will do Rumors because it deserves its due. But for us,
absolutely.
Tusk,
Yeah.
Tusk is the one.
Yeah.
And and Rumors does have a part to play in the story of Tusk. So let's jump in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the stats as we always do. Get that going, and then we'll talk about how we came to Fleetwood Mac in a roundabout way, I suppose, or when it was.
Right.
But for Tusk, it was released in October of 1979. Produced by Fleetwood Mac with special thanks to Lindsey Buckingham, Richard Dashut, and Ken Calais. And Ken Calais, if you don't know, is Colby Calais' dad.
Oh, dad.
So she had that song Bubbly and that song with Jason Mraz. So she had a couple of hits a little while back, but Ken Calais is a producer and engineer. So
little shout out to our friend Andy Cremines, who did some artwork for Colby Calais. He designed a couple of t-shirts for her.
Andrew Cremines art on
That's
Instagram.
Right. Yep.
Andrew Cremines art on Instagram. Yep. Check him out.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So we have a little connection there too.
Yeah, that's right.
We should have seen if he could get Ken Calais on here with us. That would have been awesome. This album cost over $1 million to make at the time. The most expensive album ever. This is all the story of Tusk is also a story of alleged drug-fueled excess.
Oh my God.
So they spent $1 million and and it didn't all go to recording. Let's put it that way.
Nope.
This was a double album. So I had 20 songs on it. And in this episode, we're not going to go song by song. So we will not be talking about 20 songs individually. So we're going to do you that favor.
Which it kind of lends that to the track order of the album, which is unconventional to say the least. It's not.
Yes, there's a lot of
very cohesive in any way. Nothing like Rumors was in the
and we'll talk about that. There's some curious track arrangement choices, I suppose.
Right.
I suppose.
Yes.
It sold 4 million copies, which is not bad. I'll take 4 million copies out the door. The problem is. Sure. Rumors before it sold 10 million by 1978 and it came out in 77. So this was considered a failure.
Yeah.
And that's why Tusk is kind of much maligned. It sold 4 million, but in Fleetwood Mac land, that's an abysmal failure when you had just come off the biggest selling record of all time.
Sure. People were still absorbing Rumors. I mean, it was still riding high on the charts. I mean, the song every day the songs were being played. I mean, people were who doesn't own that album? Who doesn't have that in the collection?
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you say to somebody, "Oh, what Fleetwood Mac album?" You're going to have Rumors.
Yeah,
and you're not going to have Tusk.
And it confounded critics as well. I mean, critically, it was kind of divisive there. I mean, it was kind of hit and miss. The record company were like, I think I read a quote saying something like, "We could see our Christmas bonuses being chucked out the window."
Yep, right out the window with this one. Over 4 million. So I can't. I'm
right. Yeah.
Having some trouble mustering up some sympathy for the record executives that sold 4 million copies. And then just to round this out, it hit number 4 on the U.S. charts. And there, believe it or not, though, there were 6 singles released. Only 2 of them were top 10. Tusk was the leadoff single, hit number 8. Sarah hit number 7. And then the next 4 were Not That Funny, Think About Me, Sisters of the Moon, and Angel. So there's your stats about Tusk. A lot there. So how and when did you come to this?
Fleetwood Mac or the album in particular?
This album in particular.
In this God, I don't. Frankly, I don't even remember. I mean, obviously, I had Rumors. I got into Fleetwood Mac over, with Rumors, but I can't remember how I had a copy of it, and I don't even remember if even having it on vinyl per se. But I just remember it was a really unique listening experience for me. I was one of those kids who stayed at home on a Saturday night when couldn't wait for my brother to leave because we shared a room because he went out on Saturday nights and I was the wallflower, so I kind of stayed home. Couldn't wait for him to do this. And I had a copy of Tusk and I was dying to listen to it because it was the follow-up and it must have been cassette. It had to have been cassette because I never owned it on vinyl at that time. Or I might have borrowed it from someone. I was a friend of mine that lived on the block and he had a really extensive record collection. I could have borrowed it from him. It might have been the case. I can't remember, but I do remember the first time I listened to the record And I had no idea what to make of it, to be honest with you. I was just kind of like, what is this?
Mm.
And I think a lot of people had that first reaction,
Even today, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I had it. I had it on cassette. I borrowed it from the local library.
Mm-hmm.
Full disclosure, never returned it. I mean, I don't have it anymore. It's not like I still have that copy, but it's gone. Sorry. Sorry, library. I owe you.
I didn't even know they had cassettes in the library.
No, I borrowed the album. I had the cassette,
okay.
but I borrowed the album from the library, and it never made its way back.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
And I did not get into Tusk at the time. I was not a Fleetwood Mac fan in '79. It was actually Lindsey Buckingham.
Yeah.
I got into when his first solo album, Law and Order, came out in '81.
Okay.
Trouble. I was listening to that, the first single there, getting into that, listening to the flip side of that 45, which was a really strange song called Mary Lee Jones for his album. So I was already kind of introduced to Lindsey Buckingham, the quirkiness, we'll say, of Lindsey Buckingham before backtracking and going into Tusk. So I kind of got prepped for Tusk by actually embracing his solo album Law and Order, which is a really great album. And it's very quirky, and it follows along what he was doing in Tusk, and then doubled back onto Tusk. And for me, it was probably much easier to digest because I was already quote unquote acclimated to the new Lindsey Buckingham, which is really right. What the story of Tusk is about, is really the new Lindsey Buckingham.
And when we say quirky, people might know, perhaps not, Law and Order may not be in your wheelhouse of memories, but I think a lot of people would probably recognize Holiday Road from Vacation. So we're talking about that sort of quirkiness that he has. That's Lindsey Buckingham. That's a shining example. And the other song as well is Dancing Across the USA. It's this very kind of weird, strange vocals, that kind of thing. Premiered primarily on Tusk. This was the kind of thing that he was sort of introducing.
Yeah. So I think what we need to do is, like I said, we're not going to go chapter and verse with the songs. We need to set up that, Rumours was, it came out in 77, the biggest selling album of all time up until Thriller. So this held the record for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Launched Fleetwood Mac into the stratosphere. Fleetwood Mac as a band is an anomaly because it's probably the poster child for different lineups and different members cycling in and out literally, but really they didn't have much success with that. It was kind of, they went, started out as a blues band, cycled through that, became kind of some a little less bluesy, a little more poppy. Then Bob Welch comes in from California and it becomes a little bit of that, but they're still not, they're just kind of almost treading water. They're putting out album after album,
right?
Not doing much until Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks join. They put out what's called the White Fleetwood Mac album. They followed that up with Rumours, which just exploded, the epitome of what they call the California sound, which was Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, Linda Ronstadt.
Right.
Those are like the trilogy or the trinity of what the California sound was, quote unquote, in the 70s was epitomized by those three artists or groups.
Yeah. And that's not to say, I mean, like I actually like a few of those older albums myself. Peter Green was an amazing musician. I got into Eric Clapton first, but I found out that, Peter Green was in a blues band, and he is a fantastic blues player. If you've never heard any of this stuff, please feel free to check it out. I mean, it's awesome stuff. And then, some of the Bob Welch stuff was pretty good. It's light and breezy, and it's kind of,
totally different,
but not, it didn't have that pop that, that really sort of jumped off the grooves of the vinyl, like when Lindsey and Stevie joined the band.
Yeah.
The story goes that Buckingham Nicks, they were a duo, and Mick Fleetwood needed a guitar player, and he asked Lindsey to join. By listening to their Buckingham Nicks album, which they recorded for Polydor, they were playing it in the studio. I think it was Ken Kelly, right? It was, or Richard Dashit, one of the two was playing it in the studio. Mick Fleetwood heard it. He's like, "Who is this?" And the guy told him, and he's like, "I want to meet this guitar player." And Lindsey would not join the band because unless Stevie came with him. It was a package deal. So
you have to take my
they
girlfriend as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, it was one of those rock history strokes of luck that Mick Fleetwood was looking for a new studio to record in, and that album was played as a sample of the sound of the studio and what they could kind of provide. So yeah, that's just dumb luck that Buckingham and Nicks were kind of just this duo, not very popular. They put out one album. It's a fantastic album, but it didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. So that elevated, adding those two to the Fleetwood Mac mix was magic. It was the magic that they were waiting for. And it was like lightning in a bottle, and Rumours just exploded. So now they are literally in 77, 78, they were the biggest group on earth. Mm-hmm. The drama, we're not going to get into it. The whole romance, you can look that up. You can listen to Rumours. Everyone knows pretty much that story. So now we're on the other side of that. It's like, okay, now what? Mm-hmm. And back then, and maybe to an extent now, you put out an album like that, what the expectation is and what most artists do is they go back in and they deliver another album like that.
That's right.
Because that's their sound. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you've got a particular sound, you do that. Mm-hmm. Where Tusk is interesting is that Lindsey Buckingham did not want to. He wanted to embrace something new. He was being influenced. It pulled in a couple of different ways, right? There's the punk, the new wave influence, but also firmly entrenched in folk music and Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. And so all of these kind of mashed together in Tusk, and Lindsey Buckingham really felt the need to change things up. It sounds nothing like any of his work on Rumours. Mm-hmm. Absent is the acoustic guitar. Absent is the finger picking. Yeah. Like on Never Going Back Again. That stuff is not here. It is more manic, eclectic.
Yeah.
Every song is different. Mm-hmm. He changed his looks. He had a big afro and beard, kind of like Jeff Lynne, kind of like the guys in Boston. It was a popular look in the 70s, was the fro and the beard. Yeah. Shaved his head, chopped off the beard, looked totally different. So not only was it an image change and a style change, it was just the whole thing. It was a whole metamorphosis.
Right. Yeah. One could argue that, it was either he'd been listening to a lot of this sort of post punk bands at the time, like Talking Heads, and when their new wave was coming into the fray, like Elvis Costello and these type of things. So yeah, and then but have also wanted to kind of capture the essence of what Pet Sounds was all about by bringing in just in the recording aspect of it, just weird textures and sounds and experimenting with things like, I don't know, taping microphones to the studio floor and Lindsey actually lying on the floor and singing into the mic, which would totally change your voice and change your whole pitch. Things like recording at home, like in his bathroom. Yep. Yeah, banging on tissue boxes as drums and all this kind of weird and recording these songs almost as like rough demos. But they
very lo-fi. What's now known as lo-fi, he was basically doing. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, this is Lindsey Buckingham's first solo album, because out of the 20 songs, he's got 9 of them.
Yep.
So he's one shy of having a whole album to himself. So for all intents and purposes, this was his solo album, and I think the feeling was at the time is they needed to let him do this, otherwise he would make a solo album or they might lose him. So there's a lot there, and he was looking to expand those boundaries. And what he did, I don't know how he did this, but he got access to the recording sessions from Smile for the Beach Boys, which at the time was a lost, treasure of an unreleased album that was fabled to be the best thing that the Beach Boys had ever done, and very experimental. He had access to those tapes, and that was what was driving him as well. And you hear that echoed in Go Insane and some of his other work as well, that these call outs to Smile. Mm-hmm. So he was one foot firmly planted with his idols, but another one, like you said, also trying to push the boundaries and expand the sound of Fleetwood Mac. So they not trying to sound new wave or punk, but he felt inspired by that to not just sound like Fleetwood Mac.
Right. There was that stripped down, very stripped down sound. 6-minute songs became 3-minute songs. There was very, very rhythmic approach. There was a lot of rhythm guitar being played. If there were acoustic guitar, it wasn't the virtuosic finger picking that he was known for, like you pointed out.
Yeah.
Here was like just a lot of light brushstrokes of guitar,
Yeah, strumming,
little flares of like, and changing the tone on the guitar,
mostly fuzzy.
Fuzzy kind
nice
of
fuzzy guitar.
Yeah, really dirty, gritty, and in some cases there was hardly any soloing whatsoever. It was just there. It was kind of like buzzing in the background.
Just kind of all these musical thoughts, musical thoughts.
Yeah.
And he really did himself a big favor because he was able to break out of the mold that we will see on this album that Christine McVie and Stevie Nicks still kind of came, kind of stayed in for the most part. And they helped ground this album because otherwise if they didn't, it really could have been a disaster,
right?
Without what they were doing also, which is just as important. But it allowed Lindsey Buckingham, he broke the shackles of Go Your Own Way and Never Going Back Again and would not look back. Album after album, either solo or with Fleetwood Mac, you would never know what you were going to get. You could absolutely not predict what he was going to deliver next.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he definitely became an unknown quantity, and that's what I looked forward to.
Yeah,
is what quirky stuff is he going to pull out and just and dazzle us with? He got so good at it. That's the thing.
Yeah, and you had the I had never heard of Law and Order at the time, so I didn't know what to expect, and I remember being a little, it was a little off-putting. It's like, who is this guy? Like, I'm used to the band, right? I'm used to like that, like that cohesive sound that they meticulously put together. They built from the ground up all together. And here it was like, this guy's going off and doing his own thing. Like that kind of pissed me off at the time. I was like, who the hell is this guy to be doing that? And the others are kind of left. Of course, really didn't know the drama and the personal stuff that was actually happening within the band. They were, Lindsey and Stevie had broken up. There were days where Lindsey didn't even want to play on Stevie's songs. He was like, I don't really want to do this. And that must have been tough, to come into the studio and work with the person that broke up. You broke up with this person that you lived your life with for a certain amount of years and have to contribute to her songs. And I feel, I almost think, he kind of did her a service because I feel her songs on this record are edgier than anything she's ever done before, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that more grounded, like sort of like Rumours feel is definitely inherent in Christine McVie's stuff. But I think Stevie was doing some stuff. And I think it's because of Lindsey Buckingham's, like, just that bringing that stripped down approach to even her production, and whether or not he wanted to play it actually worked.
Yeah.
It benefited her songs. I
think they were all open to it. I think they were all open to it. No matter how limited you might think it might be within the Stevie Nicks realm of songs or Christine McVie realm of songs, they weren't going to the extremes or the level that Lindsey Buckingham was going to. But they were still, there is some different stuff from Christine McVie on this as well. They have enough. I mean, Christine McVie has 6 songs. Stevie Nicks has 5 songs. So there's no slouching there either. They do have enough material on this album also to get some points across and to continue to evolve as well. So, and that's the key.
Yeah.
Is that that having them peppered, Christine McVie and Stevie Nicks peppered throughout, kind of tempers the Lindsey Buckingham stuff. If it's not something you're into, or if you find it too abrasive, or you're not ready for it, he's throughout the whole album, but you kind of get doses of Stevie Nicks and Christine McVie.
I remember,
and in a weird way, talking about you talked about the track order or the track listing, and it's kind of very strange because Christine McVie has, it's a double album, so there's 4 sides. Christine McVie has 2 songs on the first side, and then she's not heard of again until side 3.
Right.
So there's a whole side of music that's just Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks songs. And then Stevie Nicks kind of goes away on side 3 for the most part.
Yep.
And Christine McVie comes back in with her material contrasted with Lindsey Buckingham. So it's kind of an interesting, I don't know what led them to do it that way. But Christine McVie kind of bookends the album of her stuff's really mainly in the front and towards the back, and Stevie Nicks is mainly towards the middle, intertwined with Lindsey Buckingham stuff.
It's very interesting to point out that the very first track on the album is a song called Over and Over by Christine. And it's probably my favorite of the six. And
Yeah.
it's this slow burn of a song. I mean, to open an album like this was unheard of
Yeah.
back then. There's
Not
no, I
up
mean,
tempo. Definitely not up tempo.
right. And then the very next song is this weird sort of quirky, like the lead, like it's just, what is, I
Yeah.
remember like actually with my headphones in the dark, falling asleep. Like her stuff is definitely very mellow. And then, a couple of Stevie songs are mellow. So you kind of get that, you're kind of drifting off and it's nice. And, all of a sudden you're jarred awake by these like ridiculously loud and obnoxious songs that Lindsey is doing. And it's like, I can't even describe or put into any box or category exactly what they are.
Yeah. It's experimental.
It's all experimental. It's just,
within the Fleetwood Mac framework. It's very experimental. So why don't we do this? Let's talk about
okay.
the Christine McVie stuff.
Okay.
Talk about the Stevie Nicks stuff. And then we'll kind of close out with the Lindsey Buckingham stuff. And again, we're not going to go, chapter and verse, but I think there's enough here where we can. So you're saying Over and Over is your favorite Christine McVie song?
I think so. Yeah.
You know what? I would go with, I like Think About Me because it's the closest thing to a Rumours style song from her, because she's got Lindsey Buckingham singing on it. So that's kind of easily accessible. But I kind of like Honey High, which is the first track off of side 4. It's kind of just a light, easy breezy song. And that's the great thing about the Christine McVie and Stevie Nicks stuff is it doesn't sound forced.
That would be a
down tempo. Everything is just kind of,
that would be kind of a close second for me. It's kind of like a sort of almost like a Kumbaya type, sitting around a campfire. Mick Fleetwood's playing like sort of the bongos on it. There's really no heavy drums or heavy, instrumentation. It's just very sort of acoustic, and it's a really nice track.
Yeah, and Christine McVie is firmly in the. She writes romantic songs. She is always writing about being in love. That's kind of like her stock and trade.
But she could be a bit bluesy too when you consider Brown Eyes. I mean, that's a really, what? It's like I picked Over and Over. Now that I think about it, I'm kind of like, losing that, because I really like Brown Eyes too. Especially there's an alternate version of where Peter Green actually plays on it. There's a little guest performance there. Not that you can really make him out as much, but there is that presence is there. It's felt. But yeah, I dig that sort of, she can get down and bluesy and with her stuff. And of course with Mick and John McVie on bass, it really, it lends to those early days when she first joined the band. So I kind of,
her voice is a little huskier,
right?
Also, so it's got not a lot of grit to it, but it's a little bit huskier than Stevie Nicks. So she can go there, but for the most part, it's kind of she's like a hopeless romantic. I think she's just always in love, and at this time she was dating Dennis Wilson from the Beach Boys.
Yeah, so she probably has the most optimistic songs on this record.
Yes,
I mean, because most
all of her songs usually are. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. They're optimistic, they're hopeful.
Yeah,
they always are. And they're great. It's great stuff. Again, Christine McVie is a skilled songwriter in her own right. It's just that she always kind of really, for the most part, deals with one type of subject matter.
Yeah.
Whereas Stevie Nicks is definitely much more esoteric and ethereal, less structured lyrically. I think more phrasing.
Yep.
Full disclosure, I love Fleetwood Mac, but I'm not the biggest Stevie Nicks fan.
Yeah.
But I love her on this album.
I do too.
I think this is the best work she's ever done previous to this and since.
I totally agree.
I'm in love with every song that she does on this. I really am. And that's saying a lot for me, who was pretty harsh on Stevie Nicks and her persona and the whole witch thing and the spinning and the top hats.
And then she does this. I mean, there are Sisters of the Moon. There is that, that sort of gold dust woman vibe going through there. That might be like sort of a song that could have appeared on Rumours as well. It's also what I consider to be probably the hardest rocking song on the album. And because Lindsey has that blaring solo at the end. This is probably the only guitar solo on the album. But also these couple of ballads that she does, Storms.
Storms is gorgeous.
Personal and Beautiful Child, they are exquisite. They are
Yes.
absolutely beautiful. They're just such gems.
Lindsey Buckingham's guitar work on Storms
Yeah,
it absolutely makes that song, because he's just adding these little lines throughout.
right.
It's not, and that's the thing about Lindsey Buckingham, is he didn't impose his will on the other two songwriters.
Yeah.
And it would have been very easy for him to say, this is the trip I'm on, or the bag I'm in, and I'm going to bring this with, I'm going to play guitar a certain way. He didn't. And you got to give him credit for that. Is the stuff with Stevie Nicks, like Storms and Beautiful Child, and it's understated, and it needs to be, and it's gentle. And that's what those songs are. A song like Storms is just a very gentle song. And he's able to match her gentle vocal too. 'Cause she's not really, maybe on Angel and Sisters of the Moon is where she really goes for it.
Yeah.
But other than that, her voice is very understated. Beautiful Child, these are very ballady songs that I think suit her well. She wasn't trying to oversing, which is still, I think what I like about it.
At this point, she's, after touring excessively, a lot of drugs being taken, obviously, but,
notoriously,
at this time, she still had that soft voice, that very sweet voice, before her voice started to change in the 80s. And, by the mid 80s,
that crazy vibrato was out of control.
She was totally gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, God, I mean, just Storms, I think Lindsey had said, I think he did say that it might be his favorite song that she ever wrote. I'm not sure about that, but it could be. And people love Landslide. That song is like, an icon of a song, but I love Storms. Yeah, yeah. I agree. I totally agree. I always did. I think it is a better song.
Yeah. Her stuff is just very atmospheric on this album. Even Angel, which is up tempo, and again, Lindsey Buckingham just peppers in these great like licks and these great lines in Angel too, and just kind of he's just there enhancing, and he's not. You would think somebody that is as skilled as he is, and again, like what he was doing, that he would just bull rush his way into these songs.
Right.
He's not. He's leaving that experimentation for his own stuff, and providing what they need for their songs. And on Angel, it's the same thing. He's just got these little lines, these little guitar licks that he's just tossing out.
I love Angel because it's very funky, and that's something that Stevie hadn't done before. So to me, this was her kind of branching out a little bit too, because of course, in her early solo years, especially with her second, The Wild Heart, she would work with people like Prince and get that sort of R&B more into her music, and that that kind of like the kind of dance thing, the kind of groovy kind of stuff. But Angel definitely has that vibe, and I love the bass line on this song.
Yep, yeah, it's just it's a little funky. But it's more up tempo. Keep in mind, I mean, Stevie Nicks didn't have a whole lot on Rumours. I mean, she had Dreams. Mm-hmm. She co-wrote The Chain, so we'll just throw that out because everybody was in on that. I Don't Want to Know and Gold Dust Woman. So she really only had 3 songs.
Yeah.
Now those 3 songs were really, I mean, Dreams became like what she was known as, but I think the work on Tusk is just a little more mature.
Absolutely.
She hadn't become quote unquote Stevie Nicks yet. And I think that's what was important. Mm-hmm. Is they had all this acclaim and notoriety and fame, and then went back into the studio and said, we're going to make a double album. We've got a lot of material.
Yeah.
And it just got treated in the right way.
I also feel like, getting back to, Lindsey's contribution to her song, I always said that nobody made her sound as good as Lindsey Buckingham did. And anytime he plays on her songs. Yeah. And it's a shame too, because they just,
as begrudgingly as he would do it.
Exactly.
He also said that he just couldn't do it. It's not like he would torpedo her or sandbag her. It's like he can't do a bad job. He may not have always wanted to, but even when he became the full-fledged producer for Fleetwood Mac between, somewhere between Mirage and Tango in the Night, he was still enhancing her songs and make as good or bad as they may have been by the time Tango in the Night came around. He was still doing what he could and enhancing them. And same thing for Christine McVie is just upping the value, upping the depth of the songs as well with his production work at the time.
Yeah, and she would work with a lot of people. She would work with a lot of different producers. The Wild Heart, Rock a Little, I think her third She had like 6 different producers on that record, but nobody made her sound as good as Lindsey Buckingham did. It's just, you know,
that's album producing by committee.
Their
Is when you got that many.
you know, their collaborative spirit. And it's heartbreaking to think that they would never get along. They just always would have that animosity, and there's that whole drama, but they made such beautiful music together, you know? So it's a shame.
There's a complementary synergy between the two of them, no matter what personally is going on. Like I said, he's able to find something different that other people, just regular songwriters or regular producers or arrangers, don't. And he brings that different look to it.
Yeah.
But is able to temper it, again, not to make it a Lindsey Buckingham song that is written by Stevie Nicks and take it over, but to enhance what she's trying to do and understand that. And that's why, like Beautiful Child is just a simple, very simple song with a very simple piano. And it's just, Again, for me, who's not a big Stevie Nicks fan, her stuff on Tusk is absolutely amazing.
It's almost like a lullaby. It kind of like, it's sort of, you know, it's the song speaks to her not sort of growing up, much like Landslide, where, you know, she's not this naive child anymore. And I guess the song is about Lindsey, I'm assuming.
Good question.
But I don't know. But
and he sings along with her on that too. He kind of ghosts her vocal a little bit.
Very simplistic, very simplistic musically. It's very sort of childlike, which kind of, I started thinking about it, and we just did, you know, Get Behind Me, Satan with White Stripes. And we talked about that, you know, bringing that sort of childlike approach to the material, that simplistic, you know, sort of banging on a piano and just, you know, like that kind of stuff. A lot of that's going on this album. So I don't know. I can't say whether or not this album was an influence. I definitely think it was an influence on other people. Maybe not Jack White. I don't know for sure, but I definitely feel like this. I could hear other people on this album.
Absolutely.
If that makes any sense.
I can absolutely tell you. When I first heard Tuesday Night Music Club by Sheryl Crow.
Okay.
When I first listened to that album, like if Fleetwood Mac ever needs anybody, it will be Sheryl Crow, because a lot of her stuff sounds like Tusk era Fleetwood Mac to me.
Okay.
Like that song Strong Enough. And there's a couple of other ones, and it just had that same vibe. So absolutely this album, I think, resonated and as a curiosity as well. So when people listen to it, like, wow, what's going on? And they're saying, oh, Fleetwood Mac isn't just Go Your Own Way and Dreams, but you've got, you know, Lindsey Buckingham essentially striking out on his own.
Yeah.
He did 3 songs essentially as solo songs that Fleetwood Mac didn't have anything to do with. Was the Ledge, Save Me a Place, and That's Enough for Me. So 3 out of the 9 songs on the album did not have any Fleetwood Mac contributions on it. He had worked them up himself, had started working from home in some aspects, and just kind of delivered it and brought him in and said, well, these are done. So, you know, that could rub him the wrong way a little bit too, because like, okay, well, then what's really going on here?
Right. Exactly. There's a lot to be said. I mean, of you know, what this album represents. I mean, there's if Rumours was the big breakup and we're kind of okay on the surface, but these up-tempo songs really don't reflect the mood of somebody breaking up and, well, this, you know, animosity going on. So if there's literally quite the big party afterwards, we're celebrating the fact that we're breaking up, and they actually did that. I mean, there was a lot of, you know, success with this album. They totally sort of absorbed that success, and Tusk is definitely, for me, it's the next day. It's that sobering moment of waking up and realizing, oh, you know, now we got to come to work and we got to work together. And it's just, you know, it's like, so yeah, one could say that Lindsey was definitely not feeling not wanting to just jump in and could lend itself to that argument of him not wanting to do a Rumours 2. I got to do something for me.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that was his
I got to go off. Yeah,
stated purpose was not to do Rumours 2. Absolutely.
And being the eccentric that he is, I mean, you could totally throw him in the pool with the likes of Brian Wilson and Pete Townsend, and always looking over the fence, never wanting to do things quite the same twice. Lindsey is definitely one of those, I feel, one of those pioneers in our generation, I think, that was around that time, even before we even got into Brian Wilson or
Yeah.
these
Oh,
older
absolutely.
people.
Lindsey Buckingham was first. It was one of those, another one of those cases of listening to somebody greatly influenced by somebody, and then eventually getting around and circling back. And it took me a year. It took me a good decade and a half probably to get into Beach Boys and then really appreciate Brian Wilson. So yeah, he is definitely, and I think there was a little snippet of an interview with Brian Wilson about Lindsey Buckingham, and Brian Wilson called Lindsey Buckingham insane. So Brian Wilson is saying that Lindsey Buckingham is like a nutcase, like meaning as far as like the stuff that he's doing.
He must have,
I would think that's high praise, probably.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure.
Yeah, that is high praise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
from one of his heroes. So Lindsey Buckingham was really wanted to make the anti-Rumours, right? Mm-hmm. He wanted to subvert those expectations. Again, which no one was doing at the time. At the time is you make something popular, you pump out more of that same product, right. And for the most part, it's genuine because that's what a group's sound is, right? Like Boston and the second Boston album sounds very similar, kind of along the same lines, where the first Boston album was gigantic, and then Boston 2 came out and it's or Don't Look Back, same type of thing. Fleetwood Mac hits it monster out of the park with Rumours, and Lindsey Buckingham's like, no, I can't. It's not like he probably could have. I'm sure these songs could have been worked up to sound more Fleetwood Mac-ish, but he was just looking for something different and definitely taking those pop sensibilities that he already had, fusing them with that post-punk new wave. Talking Heads comes up a lot if you read a lot about this. Not that these are Talking Heads sound alike songs, but just taking that idea,
that aesthetic,
and that aesthetic, and saying, I'm going to apply it to Fleetwood Mac because I want us to kind of make sure that we're still relevant too, and just to put something else different out there.
Yeah, they're moving with the times. They're adapting.
Yeah, and at the time it was a head scratcher. Now this album is looked back on as a minor masterpiece.
Yeah,
because at the time there was no foresight. It's like, what are you doing? This weird song, Tusk was the first single, and it sounds nothing radio. There's nothing really radio friendly about the song.
Very odd.
It's got a very strange rhythmic looping kind of thing to it. And it's a whispery vocal, and then there's like a marching band, there's brass and there's horns, and it's just this chorus is Tusk. It's just like not anything that was on the radio at the time, or that would be the first single from Fleetwood Mac from their new album.
Right. And it was that marching. It's a marching band. It's USC marching band, and they recorded it in Dodger Stadium. You go check on YouTube for the video. You could watch it. It's bizarre. It's bizarre that they would even consider doing something like this, and
it's bizarre that they considered that as the first single too, as well. Exactly. I don't know how that. Yeah, nothing against it. I love it, but if you're already looking and you're already thinking that there's danger ahead, if you're the record company, you have this double album, but to release Tusk as the first single.
That's right. Yeah.
When you've got something like Sarah, which is kind of like Dreams from Stevie Nicks,
sure, it's the safe
or Think About Me, which is kind of like
that's the ultimate. That's really safe. The really safe bet. It's very absolutely.
So they're definitely they did go along with it. The record company, they did roll the dice on it. Like I said, 4 million is no slouch. The great thing about Tusk is it's had a couple of re-releases, and I think the most recent one is like one of those super monster deluxe editions.
Yeah.
I would, if you get into this album, I would highly recommend checking that out. What is it? I think it's That's Enough for Me, or That's All for Everyone. One of the Lindsey Buckingham songs, there's like 6 different versions of it. So you get to really hear him evolving these songs. So they're quick songs. They're, some are 3 minutes, 2 minutes and change. One's not even 2 minutes, but they're not throwaways.
No.
You would think that these songs are so quick that, you probably just rolled them off. But if you listen to that deluxe edition, there's a lot of different iterations of songs where they go through different, you can hear snippets of what would eventually be on it from one demo. Then you would hear snippets from another demo that would eventually make it onto the final song. So he was really just working the process and just working through these ideas until he got it honed to where he wanted it in his head. And it still sounded lo-fi. So it wasn't the slick production. That wasn't the point, but he did want to refine the ideas that were in his head, not just slapdash stuff out there.
That's right. And when when I first heard the album, I kind of miss it because I mean I do have a used copy of the vinyl.
There's a couple of different mixes that are
the mixes
different on the CD
and
than the LP.
It's been re-released I think 2 or 3 times already, and each time there's a different mix, a different master.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that, but
yeah,
they did it with two Lindsey Buckingham songs were mixed.
I know I'm not wrong. I know I'm not
wrong and not that funny, and I know I'm not that wrong is pretty significant.
Yeah,
when I heard it, I think I forgot where I got like the CD. So I was always used to hearing the cassette for so long and the LP or whatever. And I remember one night I was listening to it like with headphones on and I was falling asleep and I was like, wait, this song sounds totally different.
Yeah.
And it was, I know I'm not wrong, it's a pretty different mix. It's almost like a remix.
The latest edition, which is 2017 it came out? Or was it 19? It had to be 19 because it was the 40th.
It just came out like the super ultra.
The 40th anniversary.
Massive deluxe.
It didn't have like those backing vocals that I was looking for. Like I was really looking forward to hearing that, that song again, and it just didn't, and there were nothing. It was totally gone. Like there was a new mix and this is totally different. And to me, the new mix is like as polished as it could possibly get, if that, because it's a very, very, sort of lo-fi album to begin with. But there is a sheen to it now. There's a sort of like new, it's the best it's ever going to sound kind of feel, but that's not necessarily a good thing. I think if you go back and listen to the original album, the way it was presented back in the day, I think that the art is there, inherent. It's more, I just love that real sort of rough, around the edges kind of thing going on with, when you hear it,
guess what?
What's that?
We're geeking out over a remixed version of one song.
No, it's not just the one song. I'm talking the entire album, really.
Okay, as well.
Okay, and for the longest, and I have to point out that for the longest time, we did not have the full 7-8 minute version of Sarah either. Remember? Yeah, I think it was like the cassette and when it came out on CD, it was the single version, and that's the only way you could get the song, and if you didn't have the vinyl. Yep. So then they
strong case for vinyl,
right? With the re-releases, they put it back, of course, but yeah,
very curious. I don't know if it was because of the constraints of CD length, perhaps as well, because CDs aren't the do all and end all, and to fit a double album, you can fit a double album on one CD, but not always. There are time limitations as well. Mm-hmm. So it was if we want to get in the weeds, Sarah was like a 6 minute and 22 second song, edited down to 4:39, 4:40 or whatever. So yeah, you got almost a minute and a half, close to 2 minutes taken out of the song. So. Moral of the story: go with vinyl.
That's right. But this is the kind of but see, this is the kind of stuff though that's interesting over time. Yeah. How things sound different over time, or is it better? Is it not better? I just think the whole thing, the album itself, is fascinating enough that it went through all of these different iterations. All of these different re-releases
for a failure.
For what was considered a failure at the time, right?
Yeah, and sure. and to kind of wrap that up, guess who got the blame?
Lindsey did.
Lindsey Buckingham got the blame because it was all of his experimental stuff. So they're like, right. Oh well, we humored you and we let you do this, but we only sold 4 million copies when your previous album sold 10. So again, I still have, I can understand where they're coming from because they're looking at it from money and they're looking at it from sales, especially a double album at the time. $16 for a double album. That's like $56 in recent money. So it was pretty pricey at the time for people. Mm-hmm. And again, it wasn't like 2 albums of all like up-tempo poppy stuff. It's a lot of kind of, strange stuff, admittedly, especially
very melancholy,
especially for Fleetwood Mac fans that listened to the previous 2 albums and got used to this new quote unquote California sound.
Sure.
You're expecting that. And even, like I said, even like the Christine McVie stuff is not bright and shimmery like Don't Stop right? And you make
Right.
love and fun. It's Think About Me, her song Think About Me is probably the closest you get to that.
That's right.
Even her stuff is a little bit atmospheric and like I said earlier, ethereal, and Stevie Nicks stuff is a little more downplayed as well, except for Angel. But for the most part, it's, it has not a somber feel to it, but kind of more of a serious edge to it.
Serious, but
Not as freewheeling and fun and breezy as Rumours sounds. Like, you put Rumours on and you can kind of blow through that album,
right.
and you just go from one song to another, and it's just a really an easy listen. And Tusk isn't necessarily an easy listen. It's going to challenge you.
It does, and Rumours deceives you, because they do talk about some heavy stuff on that record, but because the album is so meticulously recorded and up tempo and light and breezy and this kind of thing, it just it totally
it's all couched in great pop music.
It totally pulls the wool over your eyes. With Tusk, you're getting the real mood of what they might have been feeling. There's a lot of drugs being taken at this point, especially cocaine was in the studio, and I think that kind of plays a big part, especially with Lindsey. I think, listening to some of these tracks, but yeah, I mean, you definitely really get the whole package of what this band was going through. And it's interesting to point out that it was widely considered to be like the Beatles' White Album. A lot of critics said it was like a sort of a cheap version of that, or
kind of messy,
like it's like they all going off and doing their own thing kind of vibe, and
and largely they are. It's not going to be a cohesive blending of these songs. Don't blend for the most part. Maybe side 2 of the first album of the first record, maybe side 3 of the second, but for the most part, the Lindsey Buckingham stuff is so off kilter. I don't mean that in a bad way. No. That you're not gonna really settle into a groove. Like I said, maybe side 3, the first side of the second album. But yeah, they're and at this point, I think it's important also to note that Lindsey Buckingham effectively asserted control of the band at this point. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is also what happened is he kind of went from like this bushy haired, bearded guitar player to really the leader, assuming producing duties. Really, from here on in, he would get the lion's share of songs on every record. Mm-hmm. So if there's 10 songs on an album, he would have 4, and or he would have 5, and the other ones would split it. So he really became the driving force, kind of under the radar. I mean, Lindsey Buckingham still did not get the notoriety until we'll say the last 10, 15 years, perhaps.
Yeah, nobody would ever talk about Lindsey Buckingham, even though he
I think that bothered him.
Most definitely did, because he was always like we saying before,
busting his can, producing these records.
Right, he's working his butt off, pushing the band to challenge themselves and to do something better or more interesting, and never really got the credit for it. Maybe critically he did eventually.
Always critically. I mean, critics always understood what the secret sauce was, that it was Lindsey Buckingham. He was, especially when he started putting out his solo albums, and they were so different, and just each one was just so, Go Insane was so experimental, and then comes out with Out of the Cradle, which is a little more middle of the road, but still fantastic. Understanding that, he was a record maker, not just the guitarist for Fleetwood Mac, that he was a producer to be reckoned with, an arranger to be reckoned with, and a songwriter. Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That wasn't afraid to take chances. That's the thing, is you could take the easy road, mm-hmm. and no one would have blamed anybody in Fleetwood Mac. Certainly not the record label. Warner Brothers would have been more than happy.
Sure.
To have more go your own ways and secondhand newses and never going back again. They did not get that, mm-hmm. whatsoever. And this is a classic case of an artist really taking control, and it's difficult within a band as well. Solo artists, you can kind of go, on these different tangents. Yeah. Especially with a group where there's 3 songwriters and 3 vocalists, it's kind of hard. It can be hard probably to assert some level of control or destiny. Yeah. When you've got other songwriters and other concerns to kind of be reckoning with.
And these are formidable songwriters. And it could be said that at this point, Christine and Stevie were the better songwriters. Lindsey himself would admit that he didn't really like his writing at this point in time.
Or they were definitely the more popular.
Which was why he was kind of pushing himself musically to do these songs differently. He didn't consider himself a great songwriter at this point. I mean, Stevie, was a sort of a poet and that kind of thing. But yeah, so you're talking very distinguished, very distinct songwriting styles here. For that to it's very difficult to kind of gel together, and especially when you're not supposed to be even talking to these people to one another.
But I mean, he did something that was very difficult. Is he totally shed his image while still being able to maintain being in the band. Like I said, still contributing and still not putting his influence on the other artists' material and still supporting them as a band member, but then still carving out his own niche in here, because you go to their next album proper was a live album. You wouldn't really get what was considered Rumours 2 would be Mirage, which came out in 82. That was kind of considered the return to like the classic Fleetwood Mac. It hit number 1. It did really well. And that was kind of considered the return to like the classic Fleetwood Mac sound. But you listen to that, and I don't hear that in Lindsey Buckingham stuff there as well. I don't think he never returned.
Yeah, he's always pushing himself to do, but he does. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think he edges out both Christine and Stevie on that record. But the formula back to that same like sort of very, very polished production, only because Tusk didn't kind of fare well. And I guess he had to concede that we need to go back to that, just to
and heading into the 80s anyway, that's that slickness was starting to permeate. And by the time you got to Tango in the Night, which was the last album with Lindsey Buckingham in that format, that's like so slick that the needle almost falls off the record.
Yeah,
like the production is just so shiny on that.
I know. It's like
you almost get blinded watching it when you put the needle on the record. You're almost blinded. It's so shiny.
And at this point, we were such fans that anything they put out, we were looking forward to.
I still do. I still love it.
But that's an album to me that doesn't hold up, only because it's like eating a really sweet piece of candy and just getting tired and sick and just it's sickly sweet. And you're just syrupy.
Never say that about Lindsey Buckingham. Everything he's done has been a
Lindsey
masterpiece.
Buckingham, not Lindsey Buckingham, but just the sound of that.
Yeah, the production is just absolutely so slick. Tusk harkens back to that experimental time, and it really, I think, also kind of cemented Fleetwood Mac as just not another one of those bands that would kind of come and go, because I think that would have been the danger if they'd done a Rumours 2. I think they would have been in danger of, at the time, and not at the time, it probably would have been great for them, but I think they would have lost credibility. And by taking such a big gamble and such a risk and failing as well.
Yeah.
And then being able to kind of recover, they had such momentum with Rumours that they really almost couldn't lose unless they put out something so horribly unlistenable. And that's not what Lindsey Buckingham was doing too. So I know we're talking a lot about this weird stuff that he was doing. All of it is infinitely listenable. It's all quick pop, like masterpieces is what they are. I mean, that's what got me attracted to it is listening to this stuff. And it was quirky, but it hits you in the pop quirkiness, not in the weird, unlistenable quirkiness. Yeah, so there's a difference between the experimental stuff that's weird, and experimental stuff that this guy is a pop songwriter. So he was also meshing these things. So it's not weird for the sake of weirdness, which he would do on Go Insane.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That was weird that was experimentation for the sake of experimentation. Tusk is kind of the precursor to that, but also still wrapped in a pop wrapper.
I agree. These songs they are, some of them are really catchy, to be honest. I mean, some of them are really, really
funny.
Not that,
that would become a concert staple, Not That Funny. And that would turn into like a 10-minute song. It's a 2-minute song. Like on vinyl, it's like a 2-minute song.
Him screaming his bloody head off on that song and doing the worm. That's like the last, when I saw them on the dance tour, that's what he was doing. Like,
but it became, I mean, that became just like a jam session for him also. so some of these songs lend it, it's not like, oh, they're kind of weird, but they would bring them out on tour. And if you could see Not That Funny live, it's definitely, on YouTube.
I actually like it better live when it's done live than the studio version. If you listen to it on Fleetwood Mac Live, which is the Tusk tour, which was grueling tour that they went through, to survive even that, and to come back and do something like Mirage, which was very light and to have the ability to come back and put something so solid out like that was confounding. But
each one of them had their solo opportunities in between too. So we got,
True.
Stevie Nicks in between Tusk and Fleetwood Mac Live had put out her first solo album as well, which soared off into infinity, and that really set her up as a solo artist to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
And she became probably the most powerful weapon in Fleetwood Mac at the time, because she proved that she can do this outside of Fleetwood Mac and not need it. Lindsey Buckingham's solo work was kind of quirky and critically acclaimed, but there was no threat that that was going to kind of.
If you weren't a fan of Fleetwood Mac, you mentioned the name Lindsey Buckingham, you probably wouldn't know who it was, and that's unfortunate, because he would often, I feel, have to go back to under the banner of Fleetwood Mac just to get his stuff heard. Like, and how many times did he would start a solo record at the, and
give his stuff to Fleetwood Mac,
because they give it over to Fleetwood Mac, and that only to get his stuff really heard, and otherwise people wouldn't buy his albums.
Yeah.
They were not commercial.
I have to say, Lindsey Buckingham might be known, if you watch Saturday Night Live, Bill Hader.
And that wonderful, right? That great. What Up With That?
What Up With That? The skit What Up With That, where Lindsey Buckingham was on every episode, but they never seemed to be able to get to the end of the episode to interview him, so they would always apologize to Lindsey Buckingham, and Bill Hader would just kind of shake his head and and then finally, the great thing about it is like, they got Lindsey Buckingham to come in for an episode. So it was the Bill Hader Lindsey Buckingham, and then the real Lindsey Buckingham came out and he played a little guitar. Paul Simon was in that episode, and kind of got the send off. So it became a running gag that Lindsey Buckingham was like the silent member of Fleetwood Mac that was never heard from. Like that no one knew. It was like Lindsey Buckingham, and it became so much of a thing that it became a recurring character on SNL with Bill Hader.
And that's Bill Hader. That's all Bill Hader. That's why I love him, because he knows this kind of stuff. Like he recognizes these little quirky things about these people, and so you would never at a million years you would never think
where
something like that.
The jeans, the red shirt, and the black leather jacket.
Yeah, it
was just all about the looks. Like Bill Hader's Lindsey Buckingham never spoke. Yeah. It was always just about like the look, and we'll get you on next time, Lindsey Buckingham, and you kind of give him a look and a nod, and be like, oh, okay, it's all right. So I think that's gonna do it for Tusk.
Yeah.
We've gushed about it. We love it. It's a lot of different things. It's Fleetwood Mac-y. It's experimental. It's Beach Boys-y-ish. If you've ever listened to any of the Smile recordings that have been recently re-released from the Beach Boys, you'll hear some of that call back into it. So he was ahead of the curve there, because somehow he got his hands on those tapes and was able to actually use that as an influence as well. So there's a lot here.
Yeah.
It's a double album. It's not Rumours. It's not the sequel. It's not Son of Rumours. It's not anything like that. It's going to be an engaging, but at the top of Eric and ours list. This is absolutely the top of the heap.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Would you recommend this album if nobody knew anything about Fleetwood Mac? Would this be the first album you have them listen to?
If they didn't, that's a good question, because it depends on what you want them to get out of Fleetwood Mac, right?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting question. I would say, if you get into Tusk, you'll kind of get everything moving forward, right? Because Lindsey Buckingham did not change.
Mm-hmm.
So you're almost kind of doing someone a disservice by saying listen to Rumours, because that was in and of itself,
right,
and did not carry through. So if you can get somebody into Tusk, it's easy to go back to Rumours, but then going forward, you'll also understand the stuff that Lindsey Buckingham was doing, because he did not change. he only continued his experimentation and pushing the boundaries. He became more poppy, his stuff, but he was still doing that. His kind of going. Here it comes, corny. He was still going his own way.
Yeah. Okay.
He went his own way. Right.
There it is.
Sounds like a song.
There it is.
It sounds like a song title. So yeah, I would probably recommend Tusk just because it's a great listen. And for lovers of music, I think you'll get more out of this than you will out of Rumours. I mean, like I said, Rumours is kind of like Billy Joel the Stranger. We were talking about it before we went on. The Stranger is it's every song almost on that album has been played on the radio, so you know it.
It's a greatest hits album almost.
Rumours is the same thing. Every song, maybe except for like Oh Daddy, has been played on FM classic rock radio, and you know it. So you're going to get the comfort level. I think Fleetwood Mac version 2.0 or the next evolution or the next class would be Tusk. Is listen to Tusk, and then you'll listen to a band evolving.
Yeah.
And that's the fun. That's the great thing is the risk that they took that they didn't have to. They could have just sat on the pile of money, and that's the head scratcher.
And this is definitely my favorite album by them. There's just no doubt about it. It's probably my top 5 favorite albums of all time. That will never change. And I think
is one of the other ones Highly Illogical by Leonard Nimoy?
No, I think Willie Shatner, I think, has to.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I got to get the Nimoy in there somehow. So that is going to do it. That's going to do it for Tusk. We thank you for joining us. We are on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at 3324 Podcast. So go check us out. Give us a follow. Give us a like. We always have our live shows once or twice a month, so we can find us there as well. Until next time, this has been Dean for Eric, and we will see you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 Podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 Podcast and on Twitter at 3324P to join the conversation.